and I'm so happy to introduce you to a number of people who will no doubt deepen the question. I've had to condense their biographies because of time constraints, but just to say they're more impressive than what I sketch here. Performers first, ladies first. Young Jean, you're a director, that's a different thing. Performers first, Helga Davis, whom I first saw here at the Soho Rep in Jemima Jones' Radiate, is an extraordinary artist whose work ranges from being the artist in residence at the Armory this past summer, in a work she conceived, and which I saw, which I loved, to currently starring in Robert Wilson and Philip Glass's seminal opera Einstein on the Beach. Mark Russell is the genius behind the Under the Radar Festival at the Public Theater, where he's also Associate Artistic Director, and from 1983 to 2004, Mark headed PS 122. The incomparable Young Jean Lee is a director, theater maker, writer, and sometimes performer who heads the Young Jean Lee Theater Company, where she has made 9 works. Is that right, Young Jean? One of which Lear had a controversial run here at the Soho Rep. Young Jean is the 2012 recipient of a Doris Duke Artist Award, and among other honors. Okay, I'm going to sit down now. He said, reading his stage directions. Okay, to begin, I first saw this piece in Chicago, where I was blown away by the parallel universes that were being constructed, one extremely physical and the other extremely verbal. In that universe of movement and sound, Drury played with the idea of naturalism and not naturalistic or meta theater. Helga, I've seen you perform in more or less naturalistic works like Jemima and work that's not grounded in narrative or the idea of naturalism like Einstein. Can you talk to us a bit about the physical and emotional challenges of doing those different kinds of work in your own life, in your own work?
The thing that for me was really, really nice about the way this piece started, and it's indeed the way Einstein starts, is that you're in as soon as you walk in the room. And when you get in the room, you are already invited to get out of a particular kind of agreement. I am grateful for this everywhere I can find it, in this city, in my life, to get out of the agreement. We are in a kind of agreement now, yeah, kind of. And so as soon as you come in, you don't actually have to sit, you have to get your own chair, you're out of the agreement. You're out of the idea that you may have had before you come in about what you're going to see and how you get to participate in that thing.
Meaning that when you enter the space, the audience expectation, the spectator expectation,
you're invited to leave that on the other side of the door.
Okay.
And I think the same thing is true about Einstein. My character and Kate Moran's character, we sit in those chairs for 40 minutes before anything happens. And people do the most remarkable and strange things because they don't know what to do. They can't really all the time allow themselves out of the construct or out of the agreement. And then you put on top of that this thing that kind of looks like nothing, kind of like we're doing our work, actually, yeah? And that there's the perception that that may not be work either. So the young woman who was here was actually in her work, and someone came in and asked her if they could put the chair, if she could sit there, or did she know where the chairs were. And so it disrupts her work, and it disrupts the audience members' agreement to come in and sit in a chair.
And to just watch.
And to just watch. But what it also does is that it means that no one quite knows where they are. anymore. And I think that's a wonderful space for play. I think it's an incredibly one. It doesn't exactly answer your question about the physical stuff, because I think this is more interesting than the physical stuff. And that, like this, that work of Einstein, we are all in every gym, every ballet class, every yoga class, every kind of class we can take, so that we are prepared to be in conversation with you in any way we can imagine. And that feels like an answer to physicality, what it takes to physically be in a piece, in a work like this, and in Einstein, and about metatheater.
Thank you. Mark, one of the great things about you that is written out, I do write scripts. Mark, one of the great things about you as an artistic director, and then we improvise from there. Mark, one of the great things about you as an artistic director is your fantastic knowledge of the world's various artistic traditions. This is something that always impresses me when I get the program, and something post-Grotowski, something post-Liz LeConte, or pre-Helga Davis, meaning you may show Helga's first piece. So there's this mixture of things going on. Can you enlighten us a bit about what this idea of meta might mean, and why is it still relatively unexplored in America as a tradition?
Unexplored? I don't know.
We love the people who do it, but the world, the American theater-going public, which is to say people who can afford something else, don't know anything about it, generally.
Well, I mean, there's been this sort of movement of people really examining the theater moment, like Tim Etchells, I don't know if you know his work, from Forced Entertainment, and Jerome Bell. A lot of people are really investigating what is it about theater, and then often making these things that happen on several different planes. And I kind of think, but for me, it's always been theater. Like, I think Shakespeare, seeing Shakespeare at the Globe must have been a meta theater experience on many, many levels. You know, you were seeing your favorite actor try a different thing, and then there's this play within a play where he's playing a donkey and all these other things. So maybe Shakespeare invented meta theater. So, and I think one of the, nowadays people are trying to, you know, theater's a dying form, and it's been doing that for a long time. And really doing it since the 1800s. And we just keep dying, and there's a trying to figure out, well, why do theater now? And that's kind of the basic question I ask at Under the Radar. Why should we do theater now? And what makes it relevant? What makes it contemporary? Why should we show up and be in this room? And each of the artists in Under the Radar answer it for their own way. And often, though, that involves acknowledging that we're coming into this false construct, in a way, and participating or creating a place for play. And one of the best things about that is the different levels of reality you can take on. These are actors acting like they're rehearsing, but then it's not, it goes on. But I think it's all about getting to that place of play. And also one of the things that I think Helga was saying is that it sort of, something shifts. And this little transgression will shift things a little bit. Oh, there are people already on stage when I walked in. What's going on? And then, or, oh, the guy I was just sitting next to is now in the show. What's up? And that kind of like gives you an interesting uncomfortability that kind of opens up your senses in a way. It makes you more aware and can strengthen the experience. I mean, I find that with a lot of drag and stuff that I love. You know? And so...
And do you think that that element of play that you and Helga are talking about is something that is generally a given when you see theater in Europe as opposed to when you see theater in America?
I think it's a given for good theater.
Yes.
You know, and I see it in America, and I see it in Europe, and I can, you know, we see there's a lot of boring theater in Europe as well. And there's sort of, I don't know what it is, that constriction sometimes that you can go, these people are not playing.
Right.
You know.
Right. That's very interesting.
They are a little more used to that shift.
Yes.
And they come to be intellectually engaged in a piece, not just entertained. Often the way our commercial history and our commercial theater, it's like sit back and we're going to wash you with entertainment.
Right.
And you don't have to do anything really.
Right.
But people are hungry for it. Look at, you know, Sleep No More and all these other, and Fritz Sabutze and all this other stuff. People are hungry to be active and activated.
Because I think that we're in a new, very interesting period of American theater going, wherein the writer and director are not taking it for granted anymore that we will be interested. It's true. They don't assume that because the production is happening, that it's going to engage us in ways that I feel that often theater going for many people of, let's say, was a part of their education. It wasn't part of something that they were going to
For pleasure.
be awash in or be physicalized by. So I think that has sort of ended, and we're in a new area of experience for writers and directors who know that they have to sort of grab us by the throat to claim our attention. Which leads us to the great young Gene. As a director, your work traverses a number of genres, and seemingly simultaneously. I remember going to a Broadway show with you once, and we were having this conversation about the audience being so old, not physically, but in their expectations and how they were responding to the play, and how there was nothing being done to the play or not being done to the audience. And I'm wondering if that was quote unquote old, what do you think of what is new? How would you define the new?
I mean, I don't know if
And do you think Jackie's play has something to do with that? Because, by the way, I became aware of Jackie's work because of you. One of my habits is just to ask people what's happening, and young Gene wrote this very sweet and supportive email saying, I've heard a lot about this young person and I would check it out. So, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think, you know, I kind of agree with Mark that I feel like Shakespeare did meta theater, you know, like I wouldn't think of it as like old versus new. Like actually when I was working on my, for years I was in a PhD program studying to be a Shakespeare scholar, and I dropped out right before finishing my dissertation and moved here.
New York will knock the Shakespeare out of you.
Pardon?
Yeah. I said New York will knock the Shakespeare out of you.
Yeah, yeah. So and what my dissertation was about was it was a comparison of Shakespeare's King Lear and the original anonymous King Lear that his play was based on.
Right.
And you know, this original anonymous King Lear apparently was a big hit in its time. And I read the play, and I was expecting it to be just terrible. And it was like it was like so much snappier and more fun than Shakespeare's version, in the sense that it was like easy to follow, like the characters all made sense, like it kind of like zinged along, kind of like the stuff we see on Broadway today, you know, just like, you know, crowd pleasers. It was like a total crowd pleaser, and I was like, wow, this is so much easier and, you know, easier to deal with than, you know, it was like watching a sitcom or something. So I feel like it's not really old versus new. I would make the distinction. I mean, I don't know how I would make that distinction, but Shakespeare then took that fun little play and then just made it long and boring and brilliant and moving and crazy, and, you know, it's like nonsensical, a lot of it. You know, so that version is infinitely like messier than the original version, and I feel like sort of what you know, when I think about what what vital theater is. You know, I would think about
that's
something.
A better word, I think.
I would think of something that is aware of the audience, because like for me, the reason, I mean, I would say so far all of my work has been meta-theatrical in the sense that, like, you know, in this age of film and television, if I'm gonna try to recreate this fictional reality, I'd rather do it in film and television, you know,
Right.
like, and so I feel like the only reason to struggle through theater with the low budgets, and it's like why, you know, why be in theater? I feel like the answer is because you get to do this thing with the audience. You know, you get to do this one thing that you cannot do in film and television. Like the performer cannot directly engage with somebody and make eye contact and like mess with them in that particular way.
Because so much of that is taken care of with the close-up, right? That the audience is responding to a close-up in film or television.
Or music.
Yes.
The music also
Yes.
is so annoying, mostly.
Yes.
Like, now you're sad.
Young Jean, I wanted to ask you another question. When I first saw this play, I didn't think of race so much as I thought of the continual concept of conquest that she explores in the text, of things being taken and the conqueror not even getting the geography right or the language right. In early works of yours, like Songs of the Dragon Flying to Heaven, you talked about the colonization of the soul, really. Did you find any of that, did that resonate in Drury's work as well for you, that she was dealing with, let's just say, the meta aspects of language to talk about the politics of the soul or the colonization of the soul and the ways in which people sell or take other people?
Yeah, I definitely...
There was a great Ed Bullen's play in the 70s called The Taking of Miss Janie that, do you remember that, Mark? That actually had those sort of themes. And so when I saw this, I thought of you, particularly the early pieces that you were doing that were really exploring that question.
Yeah, I feel like that's always, like, whenever you're going to deal with anything racial, that's always going to be such a I mean, like, that's why I feel like theater is such a great medium to deal with race in a way, because it's like you get to actually see the effects on people in the room. Like, I remember when I did The Shipment, which was like a show about Black identity, like, it was, we could tell, like, it was just so interesting because everybody in the audience was just looking at each other the whole time. And I feel like that's sort of like what you're... It's always a challenge because it's so easy to get into this simplistic, moralistic thing of like good versus evil, you know, with the evil side falling on the white side, and then the, you know, whatever, you know, and so that kind of simplistic presentation of it makes it so easy for everybody to just not have to deal with the problem, because then they're like, oh, that's too simplistic, I know that, blah blah blah, you know, like, that's so easy to shut down. But I feel like when you sort of like make it more, you have to just be really sneaky about it. And I saw Jackie struggling with the same thing that I always struggle with, is like, how do you be sneaky enough that the audience can't just shut down and be like, I know what this is, like, I know what the accusation is in this play.
Well, you get out of the assumptions and you get out of the agreement that there are going to be good guys and bad guys. You get out of the historical agreement that slavery or any kind of oppression only affects the quote-unquote victims of the oppression. It isn't true. And I think that what this thing does is it provides a container that we are all responsible for holding in place. Whatever decision we make, whether we shut down, whether we leave, whether we cry, whether we nudge the person next to us or we laugh, we are all then complicit in holding the space for the bigger thing to actually have some vibration and effect on us.
Exactly, which
and
is one of the...
that's why it's brilliant.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons, let's say, that Wilson, who has dealt with race throughout his entire career, has never done it explicitly, so that it's part of the conversation that he's having, always in his imagination and in his emotional soul, that Black culture meant this to me as a little boy. This group of people were the people who were kind to me. So what I can show is how I respond as a director. I think that what Jackie is doing here, and this is a sort of question for Mark, one of the things that I found extraordinary about it was almost sort of like curating experiences, right? That the play is that she uses this play as a forum to curate these experiences about history, colonization, maleness, femaleness, and so on. Love, let's not forget, that exists too. Yes. I was wondering, Mark, as a curator, because really one of the great things about your work is sort of making these museums of moving images, of people who are making moving images and ideas about politics. What is it in a work that makes you bring it to under the radar? They're all political works, but what is it about a political work that might turn you off and not have you invite them come to be part of the festival?
Well, if you walk in something where you know the answer already, or by just the way the first 5 minutes goes, and there are plays where you can see that, you know, oh, I'm supposed to feel this way. They're out. I'm out. I'm not bringing it. I'm not interested in didactic theater, and I want something, that theater of questions that opens you up, that shakes your perceptions. A lot of theater these days, a lot of regional theater perhaps, or even theater in this area, is preaching to a converted, you know, is singing with a choir of like, oh, okay, we're all great, we feel all really great and liberal about this now, and now we'll all go out. And I think that Jackie's trying to shake it up, and you know, and get everyone to ask questions of themselves, of the experience.
Well, it's sort of like if I sit in a show and let's say it's just a sort of traditional narrative and they've decided that they're going to use the N word over and over again. It's not that or the C word or whatever. It's not that I'm responding to the violence of the word, which I am slightly, but more, I think what I'm just responding to is the degradation of mind, and that sitting there is supposed to make us respond to the outre or the bravery of, it's the director and the writer calling attention to themselves and how brave they are to do this in the context of, you know, the fucking Brooks Atkinson Theater or whatever. I feel that when I'm watching something that you've curated or Young Jean has produced or Helga's performing in, that it's integral to what's happening. Politics is integral to what, race is integral, sex is integral, because politics is who we are. I feel that what Jackie has done here is very successful in that she has theatricalized what's integral to everyone without telling me how to feel or think about it. So I think we just want to thank her for this kind of work, and ask if there are any questions or that anyone might have.
May I just add one more thing?
Sure.
One of my favorite moments of Einstein is the prematurely air-conditioned supermarket thing, right? All the props are laid out. The jacket's laid out.
Pearls.
The pearls.
Lollipop.
The gun, the chains, and the lollipop. Almost every time when Kate turns around with that gun, people crack up. Like there's something, like if they're waiting for a moment to sort of laugh and have relief, they go there. When I pick up that gun, I do exactly the same thing, right?
Same movement.
It's there. They know I'm going to pick it up. It's not funny. No one ever laughs. When I put those chains on my hand and turn around and go ga 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 ga, no one thinks it's funny. And I think that in this way, it's genius of Bob to have these two characters have this conversation out loud without ever saying a word.
This is very interesting because in Young Jean's piece, The Shipment, the reason it blew my mind was I was in the second act before I realized they were saying almost the same things that they had said in the first act, except they weren't talking Black. And so syntactical relationship to the emotional relationship gets so messed with in pieces like these, or Bob's work, or the work that you're curating, that I think one of the things that it does is give me immense hope that we can keep being in dialogue with people like Jackie. Do you feel, Young Jean, that when you're, because you are doing work that sort of is creeping up, right? A little bit out of very, very small theaters into larger theaters. When you do that, are you very aware of not losing what you were able to say in a smaller theater?
Yeah, we're crazily applying for grants for audience development money, actually, right now. Like, I spent the whole past week,
Wow.
applying for audience development grants, because the next theater we go to it's going to be a real challenge, because once you get to these bigger theaters, the ticket prices are so expensive,
Yeah.
Is that
it's like...
that my theater?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not officially, no. I don't even know what you, I don't even know what you said.
But that show is coming out.
Yeah.
What did he say something?
I don't remember.
I don't remember
So
either.
Okay.
Yes, but that's going to be, it's like when ticket prices are that expensive, getting diversity in there is difficult, because the people who have money to buy really expensive theater tickets tend to be of a specific demographic. So we're kind of frantically figuring out what to do about that.
How to crack that.
Because
taking
also,
that on yourself.
Yes, because
That's
when you
interesting.
have, let's say, the director and writer Young Jean Lee, do you mind if I mention what the program?
No, sure, no, go ahead.
Can you tell them what?
My next project, it's actually my next project is my first sort of naturalistic 3-act play, and it's called Straight White Men, and it's a straight white male identity politics play, because I feel like we're getting to the point where straight white maleness is no longer the default, and it's actually becoming an identity that
Right.
people have to contend with. So.
Right. Helga, tell me what is next for you other than Einstein and the piece that you're developing, which has a lot to do with all this.
I'm working on a piece called Cassandra. Aside from the fact that I'm particularly interested in the mythical character, it also happens to be my middle name. And my Cassandra it's the last day of her life, and she's on her way to the shrink. And I'm not, other than that, I can't say anything else about it. But it's going to happen next year. What month is this? This is
November.
Because I'm completely lost. March,
Yes.
something like that.
Look out for it. It's beautiful. And Mark, just tell the people about where they're going next.
They get me started. I have flyers for it, but under the radar.
Way to go, Mark.
Yeah, we're gonna get flyered. But Under the Radar starts January 9th and goes to the 20th, and it starts with something called Ganesh versus the Third Reich. There are 12 other things, and at the end is a co-production with Soho Rep called Life and Times Part 1 through 4, and we're really excited. Our first big collaboration with Soho Rep, and that will then end the festival in a marathon 11-hour piece,
Yes.
and then go on for 2 more weeks.
Yes.
And that's by Nature Theater of Oklahoma. You should see that. Get your tickets now.
Listen, I just want to thank you guys for having us.
What?
Yeah, we're on sale.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Please
come on.
buy tickets. Come back to the Soho Rep. See Young Jean's piece. It's going to be great. Helga's piece is great. See her in Einstein. And thank you so much for having us.
Can we
Oh,
have
there's
some
a question.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for Young Jean. Can you, I haven't read it, so can you just talk a little bit about the moment at the end of the play when the last actor leaves and they're all just kind of sitting here staring at each other?
This piece.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't write this.
Right, but I mean, is that written in this, or how did
Oh,
that
it's not. She's not the playwright.
Right.
Oh, and I'm just saying because I haven't read it, so I don't know. That last moment when we're all just sitting here?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean in the script? Is it in the script?
Yeah, or how did that develop? I just thought that was pretty
From what
we
I
don't know.
understand from Eric is that it's almost
Raphael?
more written like a poem.
Yes.
And that I don't know that is directly in there. Raphael?
Raphael, is it in the script? She's here! Congratulations.
You mean like when everyone leaves and then he like comes back and then leaves, the black guy?
Yeah, or I guess just the moment after that, before they're coming to bow.
Oh yeah, that was a collaborative thing, figuring out how to, because the play I think officially ends when he starts to say a word and doesn't say it. But the moments after that were something that myself and Eric, the director, and the actors and designers talked about a lot to figure out how to manage that.
I actually was confused by that moment of eye contact because like I was sitting like right by the woman who got that look, and to me that look was extremely accusatory, and I don't know if it was supposed to be. Was it supposed to be?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so. I didn't think so. But in that moment, it looked very, and I was like, "Whoa, that does not seem in keeping with the rest of the show."
Yeah, no, I think it's hard because it's like it can change. Like there's so much room for flexibility that it has to be in that.
Right.
Yes.
Figuring out, yeah, like how to stare at someone but not be like, "You lynched me."
Right.
I'm totally undercutting all of my
Thank you all for. Oops.
Well,
No, what is this
there's a
delayed
few questions.
stuff?
Let them go.
Please.
We didn't give them a chance.
Oh, well, we just got it?
We missed it.
Okay.
This is one of those terribly annoying questions where I'm just going to let anyone answer if they feel like it. This is something that I think about a lot and came up while I was watching this show about being uncomfortable while you watch a play. Because I see a lot of theater, but I don't make theater in any way. So I feel like sometimes I feel cheated when a play makes me feel uncomfortable because I feel like it's very easy to make someone feel uncomfortable. If you're very loud, or you get up and you're an actor and you're in the play, like if you've seen that once, it makes you uncomfortable, but if you've seen it multiple times, like it's not that compelling. So as you guys who create theater and produce theater and critique theater, do you think that it's actually the hardest thing to make people like compellingly uncomfortable?
More, please.
I'd like to know what young Jean thinks, but I think there are lots of tricks, but there's the integrity of purpose and of the crafting of those moments, of making you uncomfortable. There are lots of cheap things you can do to make the audience uncomfortable. This is why I don't go to magic shows so often. You know, I'm afraid I'm going to be the guy up there getting sawed in half or something like that. And I hate that stuff. I'm looking at people that are using those strategies in a much more subtle way, like this one. Mm-hmm. I was very concerned. I mean, I knew sort of what was going to happen a bit. So I didn't come into it as clear as maybe someone just coming down to see something at Soho Rep. But it still, it unfolded in such a delicate way.
And I think also the space, it depends on the space and how the space will affect you psychologically. I saw this in Chicago, and it was like in a school auditorium. So I was way back, and there was a proscenium arch, and it was, you know, like a theater in that way. But I felt I would probably feel more frightened there as the physical embodiment of one of her ideas. David Ashme did that in his play, the Zoe Caldwell play. What's it called? Elective Affinities. When I walked into the house, she plays a very, and this is all very muted. It doesn't have to be screaming and people carrying on, but she came up to me and she shook my hand and said, "It's been such a long time." And she made my flesh crawl, because it was the kind of person that you know insults you the minute you walk out of the room, but I couldn't leave because I had to describe it. So I think it really depends on physical space and what the actors are doing. I've seen a production of The Blacks at the Classic Stage in Harlem that actually I went with a white male friend, and I was more freaked out than he was, because I knew was what was maybe coming for him, but it didn't. It came from me. So I think space has a lot to do with it. I think your own frame of mind has a lot to do with it, and I just think that it's like, the great thing about theater really is that it's a collection of moments of being. You don't know what's going to happen, and if you do know, then you know it's a crummy play, or a bad actor, or a bad director.
I mean, one thing that I would add to that is I think that the one danger, one of the things that makes this kind of, I don't know, what to call it, immersive theater, like, I don't know, meta-theatrical theater so tricky to make is that, like Jackie said, it's like that moment of eye contact has to be sort of different every night. Like there's only so much you can control. And so, even on a perfect show night, if somebody comes in and they're not in the mood to like really get into it, like they will hate it, and they will not be able to, because it's like you can't, it's not like with a story. We all know how to like sit back and relax and like enjoy a story, but if you're like not in the mood, there's tons of badly done meta theater, but it's like there's, even when it's done in its best way, if you don't get into it, then you'll just be alienated the whole time.
Right.
And it can be like, you can come on one night and hate something and come on another night and love it, vice versa. And it's really like a crapshoot in that sense.
There's this great Pauline Kael essay about the movie Shoeshine, and she talks about how she had seen the film after she had a quarrel with a lover, and she couldn't stop sobbing, and it took her forever to figure out if it was what had happened to her, or if it was the film, or if it was a combination of both things. And I often feel that it's wrong for someone who's writing or describing what happened to not give the reader a context. I can't bear to read critics or whatever you want to call them who just say I liked it or I didn't like it. It makes me feel insane, because that's not what the experience is. The experience is so much bigger than even my words, or it really is a collective experience for me. So to single myself out, I better come with something that's not just I liked it or I didn't like it. It's like, what is the collective experience that I'm having, and then coming back to myself.
That's the key word, is collective, because I've been making this sort of false distinction between like naturalism, like the passive sitting back. That's actually not a true distinction, because I feel like Shakespeare has that collective feel. I feel like it's even the most naturalistic, like, the most sort of traditional play, I think can have that collective feel with everybody in the room.
I'm trying to think of something. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, where everyone knows this play, everyone has seen the film, and it was so shocking to see it vis-a-vis this director and these actors who actually brought something that I had never even considered, which was that they were attracted to each other. The fundamental problem was language. Language was getting in the way constantly of this force that existed between the two characters. And so I just sat there with this play where people are saying the vilest things about it with this big grin on my face, because I was able to see again. I'm sorry.
I'd just like to ask a meta-theatrical question.
Yes.
In addition to we've got the playwright here, in addition to the script, are there elements in the performance that were actually devised by the actors out of their own experience that are included now in the performance? In other words, if an actor says, I come from Pennsylvania, my grandfather, etc., is that scripted, or is there something of the actor's experience that you improv'd and then put into the text?
I think that about 95% of the text that was presented here existed before these actors were cast.
Is texted.
Yeah, and the things that were devised by the company were more things like the hip hop song, like that wasn't in the text, or like it was supposed to happen, but like not like it was supposed to be Beyonce and then Rihanna.
That's great.
I think the actors were just really strong, and
Yeah, I mean, that's why they get the big butts, really. I mean, really, truly, why we love them. They can make you feel insane on a personal level, but the amazing experience of acting is you give them something. Mm-hmm. You give them something that you have written, 2 pages, and your head comes off because it's a whole universe of experience that they're bringing to it. And so I think, again, this goes back to that issue of what's the experience, the personal experience we're having, and what's the collective experience, the in and out kind of stuff.
Well, to me, it goes back to breaking the frame. So
yes.
She's written a text in which the frame is broken.
Yes.
And there would be an additional layer of frame breaking if the actors actually broke into that and inserted the personal character into the breaking of the frame of the written character, if you see what I mean. So that would be another layer of metatheater that I do think you're finding somewhat these days in devised theater, and that may be a new element of metatheater, which I've studied it, and it's really,
well, this is, I mean, this
Gene
is...
says it's an old form. People thought Pirandello was the absolutely newest thing in the world in 1920, and he was riffing off somebody from the 18th century and so forth. And he was riffing off Shakespeare. So.
Yes, and this is I always think of, when you were describing that just now, it was such a great memory of reading when they were in rehearsal for Sweet Bird of Youth, and it was Tennessee Williams and Elia Kazan and Geraldine Page. James Baldwin was interning because he wanted to write plays. And Elia Kazan said, you can sit in with us. And so he wrote this beautiful essay about Geraldine Page. And he said, she frightened me. There was something in her open Midwestern face that I would approach and say, this goes back to the actor issue, and I would just want to say hello to that person, and then she would pick up a prop. And I was so frightened by what would come out of this person. He remembered that Tennessee started screaming in the theater. This is a great meta-theater moment. Started screaming, that woman is ruining my play, when in fact she was making the play her own. So I love alchemy. I think that's the word, alchemy. Is to see that transformation happening, where the writer feels threatened by the performer has to ignore the writer, and it's often the director. Because once you hire them, you're hiring that person, and you have to trust that that person is going to bring the things that you need. Am I wrong, young Gene? Okay. Thank you.